What is a global phenomenon and what role do you play in it? As we go about our daily routines, keeping the house organized, performing our jobs well, keeping up with friends and family, we're all secluded in a small nucleus of the world. Bringing in meditation, Qigong, yoga, and Tai Chi, these activities can be done individually, but more often than not, people gather to participate in them together. And when this happens, there's a global shift in consciousness that has been measured and documented. Lynne McTaggart, with her intention experiments, has measured these kinds of phenomenons repeatedly and has expanded programs to support people with intention gatherings. My guest today, Bill Douglas, from World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, and now on a second global event, the Global Transformation Project, is working to expedite mind-body education worldwide and has been creating these waves of consciousness for almost 3 decades. Based out of the Mind-Body Institute at the University of Kansas Medical Center, he offers a Tai Chi class for self-care on a weekly basis with profound results. Doug is an award-winning author of 6 books about mind-body practices and meditation. He's been published in several languages, and Deepak Chopra has called him the gift to the world. His latest book is the new 2nd edition for The Gospel of Science, Mind-Blowing New Science on Ancient Truths to Heal Our Stress, Lives, and Planet. And here is the description that's written for it. It is not uncommon for a book to claim to be life-altering or world-altering. What is rare is for a book's author to provide science proving their book literally, positively affected the entire planet in a scientifically measurable way. I just love that. These world-altering effects offer profoundly beautiful possibilities, not just for the planet, but for our personal lives. The science in this book can dramatically lower your stress, improve your aspect of your life, reduce stress, and ignite hope. And in a world of constant alarming media, things may seem a bit hopeless at times, but new science proves the opposite. We're on the cusp of a personal and global transformation. You're listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, sponsored by the Cape Breton Tea Company and Dance Debut Inc. It's my extreme pleasure to welcome today Bill Douglas to the show. Welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Michelle. I've been really looking forward to it.
It's always lovely to talk Tai Chi with people and, especially, instructional sides of things too. So I'm happy for that. I always start by pulling a card from my affirmations for the body and biofield deck. And this is my way of goal setting for this occasion, because the energy between what you do and what I do, I know is going to raise a lot of energy and vitality and consciousness. And I'd love for people to be able to feel that balance and flow. So what I did is, and I always just kind of, the deck, so those people on the podcast won't be able to see, but I'm going to hold up the deck. So it's a fairly thick deck. And what I usually do is tap on it and cut it. So I don't actually look through it to see if I can find the right card for the occasion. But what I pulled from the deck was this piece here. So for those people on the podcast, it's purple blue ribbons of color, and they come from the center and they wave out from the center. This is actually a photograph of nature from Cape Breton, and it's been run through different filters to create the image that's here. And that's been done by Tanya Levy. So on the back, the affirmation is from Meeting the Divine: lead with vision, goals, and ability, supporting the flow and manifestation of possibility with those around you. Without ego-based decisions, without ego-based let me try it again. Without ego-based decisions, flow and action quickly engages. Sorry about that. 8th chakra identification point. So that is our reason for being here, why we do things, and what's going to happen. And I thought, my goodness, did I pick the card for you today? Lead with vision, goals, and ability. Absolutely. Okay, so the second part is I always like to add a cup of inspiration, so something to sip on while people are listening to the podcast, so they hopefully will take the time to sit and relax a little bit. So what have you got with you today?
Well, I have my favorite substance in the whole universe, and that's water. Yeah, and I have a couple of granddaughters, and when one of my granddaughters was about 4-ish, she was visiting, and she was drinking a glass of water, and I said, Angelica, I said, when you drink that water, I said, do you feel that silky feeling in your mouth? And then do you feel it going down your throat? And then do you feel it going into your stomach? And then you feel it spreading through your stomach. And I didn't think she was paying any attention at all. Kids that age, they're bouncing all over the place. And then about 5 minutes later, I'd completely forgotten that I told her that. And I just happened to be looking past her out the window, and I noticed, out of the corner of my eye that she was taking a drink of water, and she took the drink of water, and she goes like this. She goes, and then she looked at me and goes, I feel that, Gong Gong. And so I'm always trying to get them, to just feel their lives,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's the best thing I can teach them. I don't think I have any like, scholarly advice or anything, but if I can just encourage them to just constantly remember how beautiful it is to experience every little moment that they have, how beautiful the clouds and the sky and
Mm-hmm.
the trees and the grass and the squirrels and the chipmunks.
Well, and it's true, you put that sip of water in and then you just assume where it's going to go because you're
Yeah,
busy
well,
doing the next thing.
yeah, John Lennon had a great line in one of his songs. He said, life, it was to his son. And he said, life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then it's never any fun. Nothing's ever special or sacred or fun or anything when we're always thinking about the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we've all had conversations. I mean, we've all done this. It's not like any of us are above it or anything. I mean, all the mind body practices I do, they help me tremendously to be more present. But it's not like I have it mastered or anything. I go through all this stuff. But yeah, it's like when you're having conversations with people, if you're having a conversation with somebody that's present, in the moment, it's a whole different experience than if you're having a conversation with somebody that that their mind is always, you know what I mean, pulling out the cell phone, looking at the watch, all those things.
Yep.
It's
Racing to
just
the next.
it's
Yep.
it's just this surface, this skipping across the surface kind of connection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Which is why I'm hoping people take the time when they go to listen to the podcast that they actually stop. I know some people do that while they're in the car or out in the garden, but at least if you're doing those kinds of things, hopefully, or while you're cultivating, you're still allowing that opportunity to be present in the conversation and to feel the nurturing that's coming to you as a result of the conversation.
Well, and then the science shows that when we go into sensory awareness as opposed to intellectual awareness, when we're feeling things, the Heart Math Institute research, they call it heart-centered consciousness, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very healing. It's very healing. Other science calls it gratitude consciousness, is when we're enjoying the sensation of our being and experience, with having a sip of tea or whatever, just fully being present and fully enjoying it. And it actually, that state of consciousness actually changes the molecular structure of the heart and the brain in positive ways.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that I think is so cool about how the universe was put together, because it's like the universe wants to celebrate, and so when we celebrate an experience, it has these healing effects on our body and mind and nervous system and heart and everything, and I just find that so poetically beautiful. What a beautiful way to create an
Mm-hmm.
existence. Where
Mm-hmm.
you get rewarded for celebrating your existence.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, well, what I'm going to bring forward here is the Cape Breton Tea Company is a sponsor. That's the company that I'm currently running and playing with. And so I put together a tea here that is from Mission for Change. So this is to support a family in Africa, in Malawi, family of now 14 because they just lost their mother, the matriarch of the clan. Um, so this blend here is a special blend put together for that. And I've put it inside my happiness mug. It does smile at you on one side, but the side that I'm showing out to Bill and to anybody who's watching the vodcast version, I've got a wink going on. So just to remember to find the humor in everything that we're doing. So So, Bill, I give you a cheer. Thank you so much for coming and joining,
Cheers.
and we'll savor this sip. Oh, beautiful. Okay. Where I wanted to start with our conversation today is you've done two huge world initiatives. Many people, it's a stretch for them to do one, but you've chosen to. But you also have your writings too, which in themselves are transformational. So there's more than that. And I'm curious what made you think your impact, because sometimes people go, well, I'm just one person. And how
Hmm.
could I make an impact? What made you think you could make a difference? And it gave you that impetus to say, I'm going to do this world initiative.
Yeah, well, the whole thing, it's been a lifelong process, and I think we all kind of have a reason for being on the planet, and we're all unfolding our lives and trying to figure out what that reason is, and we know when we touch into it because everything feels kind of exciting. It's like you can't wait to get up the next morning when you're, finding that thread, that we're here for, whatever that is. And so the whole journey, it actually started in my childhood, but I didn't realize it. It's like I had to go through 66 years and then look back and see how it all unfolded. But it's all been going into alpha state, that meditative alpha state where we let go. In Tai Chi and Qigong and Taoism, we call it song or sung. It's that abject surrender, like the sinking when we sink in Tai Chi, and surrender to the flow flowing through us. William C.C. Chin, he said, I don't move. He said, I don't flow energy. Energy flows me. And so, we're learning how to relax out of the way of it. And a huge part of all the mind body practices, that's what brings us all into one family is, Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, yoga, and mindfulness is that alpha state. They all have the ability to produce that alpha state when we do the practices mindfully, and we let go and we surrender ourselves into the flow or the samadhi or whatever it might be for the different disciplines. But they but they all have that where you let go into alpha state. And so what going into alpha state did was it constantly enabled me to keep letting go of what I thought I was so that I could open. Well, the Tao Te Ching says when I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. And
Hmm.
so it was like I would just constantly had to go into this, and and a lot of people, the Tai Chi and Qigong world, it's a wildly diverse world. In fact, I got an email from a Tai Chi teacher in Chicago, I think, and he said, "Bill," he said, "I got to give you a lot of credit." He goes, "Trying to organize Tai Chi teachers is like herding cats." And because everybody's very independent thinkers. And so I remember we got inducted into the Internal Arts Hall of Fame in 2009 in New York. And while I was there, I just happened to be walking up the steps behind some other guys that were, they were like, kind of kung fu Tai Chi guys, and they were really upset. They didn't know who I was. Nobody knew who I was. But anyway, they were really upset that I got inducted in the Internal Arts Hall of Fame. And one of them said, "Yeah, all he did was just organize, a World Tai Chi Day event, a World Tai Chi event." And and I was thinking, man, it was like out of all these years of doing Tai Chi, I can't think of anything that really tested my Wu Wei and my Tai Chi flow and my letting go, letting go, letting go than trying to organize people that spoke all different languages in all different countries, all different religions, all different persuasions in every form that you could imagine. And it was just constantly going into that alpha state, that flow, that letting go, that drift. And then that's what enabled me to navigate the waters and kind of see, oh, okay, this will lead me here, and this will lead me there, and this will lead me there. But all my life, I've I guess I knew that I was going to be, that I was going to be trying to get, not teaching people how to meditate, but or how to do mind body, but what I've found that my skill was is, I've had people that said, "Bill, why don't you go into advertising? You're so good at promotion." But what they don't understand is I can't promote something unless I'm living it and breathing it, and I just
Hmm.
feel so profoundly that people need to know about it because that's the only way I can have the esteem to do it.
Hmm.
If it's something like that. And so when I was a child, I had an angelic experience, and I kind of put it in quotation marks because I don't know if it was an angel. All I know is that I was 6 years old and it looked like an angel. and and it was beautiful. But I was scared. I was kind of scared. And so anyway, what I realized looking back was I had an out of body experience, and
Mhm.
it took me and it flew me across town and it put me down in an alley between a church and a Sunday school, and it started teaching me how to breathe, how to take big breaths. And then on the sighing exhales, just let go, everything mentally, emotionally, physically. I can't tell you how it told me this, how it taught me this, but I can just tell you that I knew that that's what it was teaching me. And as I got better at it, I started lifting up off the bricks in the alleyway. And pretty soon I was doing these big loop-de-loops, up into the sky and coming down. And I remember this angelic figure, or that's what it looked like to me, at 6 years old. It just looked like it looked satisfied, like, okay, I had gotten whatever it was that it was supposed to be teaching me how to do. And
Mhm.
then the next morning I woke up and I just got up, got dressed, grabbed my lunch sack, started running down the alley to school because I was going to teach all the other kids how to fly, right? And I didn't realize that what it was I was going to teach them how to meditate, because I didn't know what meditation was. And but I knew I was going to teach them how to fly. That's what I was going to teach them. And so I'm running down the alley and I take a big breath and I start lifting up off of the alleyway and then splat down in a mud puddle. And so I was so disappointed, because I wasn't going to be able to go to school and show the kids how to fly. What I didn't realize was that it was going to be about almost 40 years later. And it wasn't going to be, and I wasn't going to be teaching them how to fly. I was just going to be giving them the science that would convince people at all levels of society that they needed to find a Tai Chi or a Qigong or a meditation or a mindfulness or a yoga teacher in their community. And
Mhm.
that's what everything that I've done. I've constantly pulled myself out of it, as much as I could, so that I could uh, uh, work with mind body people all over the planet. Because what I've come to the conclusion of, I think this last book that I finished, the new second edition of the Gospel of Science, I think that was where all this was leading, because that's where I put all this 40 years of science together. And what it convinced me of, and there's nothing like writing a 700-page book of science, because you have to read it over and over and over again, especially if you can't afford editors, uh, which I
Mhm.
couldn't. So I had to be my own editor. And, uh, uh, and so reading that science over and over again, what it did was it instilled in me something that I haven't really seen any other mind body teachers or leaders or spokespeople really comprehend the way that I comprehend it. And that is that when you look at all this science, it is literally insane. It is literally insane that this isn't part of public education, because it increases our IQ substantially. I mean, not a little bit. Practicing going into alpha state on a regular basis, whether it's any of the big five, Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, yoga, or mindfulness, if we practice them in that flow state and that mindless, or that mindful state, we go into the alpha state. So it increases our IQ. It improves our GRE reading score, our verbal fluency, our math proficiency skills. It reduces bullying. It treats ADHD symptoms. It cuts students that practice Qigong meditation were 50% less likely to catch colds during the school year. And so, what we're talking about, Dr. Herbert Benson at Harvard said that up to 90% of the illnesses sending people to the doctors are caused by stress and best treated or prevented by mind body practices. And he said that's the big five that I just mentioned: Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, yoga, and mindfulness. And also repetitive prayer produces alpha state as well.
Mhm.
And so what we're talking about is the potential of saving trillions of dollars, not just once, but every year in the future, by simply teaching kids how to do mind body. And what World Tai Chi and Qigong Day really opened my eyes to, because I didn't know, I'm from a small western Kansas town. That's where I am right now. And I had no idea until we started organizing World Tai Chi Day. And then I realized mind body teachers are in every city in every country on the planet. It would be so easy for schools to start interviewing local mind body teachers and find the ones that are best capable of working with children. And you teach kids in age appropriate ways from kindergarten through 12th grade. And it would be completely optional. So, what we're going to do is we're going to get a United Nations resolution passed to advocate public education to look at mind body as a part of public education, and it wouldn't be mandatory for any country. It wouldn't be mandatory for any school. It wouldn't be mandatory for any student, because we've taught in public education over the last 30 years. And one of the things that we always do, and it doesn't matter whether it's a public school or a prison or a corporate wellness program or whatever it is, we always tell them that if it's a captive audience that we're going to be teaching, we always tell them there has to be an opt-out. People can't be forced to be there, because the only way mind body works is if it's your idea, if you want to give it a whirl. And so that's the way we set it up. And we've, in all these years of public education, I think I only had one kid in one class that got up and walked out, and he was really sorry he did after it was over, because when he came back, all the other kids were kind of in a state of awe, from what they'd experienced. And so this would be so easy to do, to just bring the mind body teachers that exist in every city into the public school, interview them, talk to them, see which ones can work with kids at different levels. Because what we envision is teaching them all five, teaching them meditation, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, and mindfulness. And if you do it an hour a day for 5 days a week, kids are going to get exposed to these things in depth. And what you'll have is a whole generation of mind body masters, who aren't going to get hypertension, who aren't going to get diabetes, all these things. These things will just melt away. And we're talking trillions of dollars in saved health costs in the future, and also a kinder and gentler world. Because one of the things that happens when we go into these alpha states is the empathy and compassion part of the brain gets larger, and the fear and stress part of the brain gets smaller. And I can't think of a better prescription for a planet that went from 2 billion people when I was born to 7 billion people right now. And we've got to figure out how to deal with this whole new world. And everything has changed except for our consciousness. And Albert Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. And so what we're offering is a way to get mind body into public education and literally change the consciousness of a whole new generation in nothing but incredibly positive and beneficial ways. There's no negative side effects to this at all. And it's all, see, we're the first mind body generation who's had all this science that proves all this. And one of the things that I've been kind of disappointed when I've talked to a lot of Tai Chi and Qigong, because that's mostly my world is Tai Chi and Qigong, but this is a coalition. We want yoga, meditation, mindfulness. We want the mind body community to come together on this. But I've been really disappointed because, it's like they don't sometimes grasp the full breadth and depth of what it is that we're offering the world. We experience it in our lives, but it's really easy to diminish it. Because you don't have validation on the news. And what I always explain to my students, the only reason you don't hear about this stuff on the news it's not because it's not incredibly effective. It's because it doesn't make anybody billions of dollars. If it doesn't make anybody billions of dollars, you're not going to see it on the news. That's just the way that it works. And so it's like if the global mind body community can find our esteem, and recognize the treasures that we are and what we have to offer. And we could get it out to kids. So like kids in kindergarten, you could be teaching them real playful stuff, animal qigong, just things to get them to feel their body and breathe, mind body things. And so you just make it fun. You want to keep it fun all the way through K through 12. You don't ever want it to be this serious, masochistic endeavor. You always want it to be light and fun. And that's, at the core, that's what it is. Tai Chi and Qigong, at their core, it's just fun. It's just this celebration,
And I was thinking about, as you were talking about the benefits physically within the body, but then we also have the children's opportunity to learn.
Yep.
Because that's all enhanced. And so the opportunity then to have less time on a particular subject or less time working on skills that maybe were challenging before, you smooth out the opportunity for them to learn through that piece. And it's an area that they don't really talk about because they always have that blocked time for the different subjects. And it's the same attitude as well about you want people to be there to do the mind body practice. It's the same. You want them there to be present to learn each of the subjects, even if it's not their favorite. But once you've practiced, it's different.
Yeah, one of the things that just occurred to me when you were talking about this is I remember when ADD and ADHD became like a big deal, on the public scene. And all of a sudden, there were public schools all across the United States. I don't know what it was like in other countries, but all across the United States, there were schools that were having people come in and talk to, school health people and educators and parents. And they were telling him, they were giving them a list of things that might, make their children fall into the category of ADD, ADHD. And then they had, pharmaceutical recommendations to deal with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how could that happen? But we're not having people go into public education and tell teachers about a scientifically proven way to get into an alpha state, which will increase the student's IQ, reduce their ADD, ADHD symptoms, reduce anxiety and depression symptoms, as well as any pharmaceutical. That's what the research shows. Meditation can reduce depression and anxiety symptoms, as well as any pharmaceutical, except no negative side effects, only positive side effects. And while it's doing all that, it's improving their GRE reading score, their math proficiency skill, their verbal fluency, all the things that we want a student to be able to do in education. It doesn't make any sense if there was this wholesale move to get everybody educated about ADD, ADHD, but there's no wholesale movement, to get mind body. And again, this is where the mind body community, we have to find our esteem. We have to stop playing low. You know what I mean? Because I've been teaching in hospitals for 30 years. And, and I've been to some major conferences, diabetes conferences, major like regional, national conferences. And the mind body people like me, we never make a keynote speech. We're never the keynote speech. And our table is usually down the hall where you can't quite see it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But all the pharmaceutical companies, they've got their booths right out there in front, right?
Yeah.
The stuff that we're offering could radically reduce the need for a lot of pharmaceuticals. And we need to own up to this. Our countries are facing a financial healthcare crisis that's unprecedented in history. And it just doesn't have to be. It simply does not have to be. When you look at the science, you realize if we were teaching kids how to do self-care, how to connect with their mind and body, because it boosts T cell counts, it supports vitamin D levels, it heals DNA, it increases brain size, shrinks the stress and fear part, reduces all those stress chemicals. And it just goes on and on and on. I had to write a 700-page book to get all the science in there. That's how much science there is. And it's all mind bending, mind bendingly beautiful and hopeful. And it's just, I just think it's like the biggest scandal in history that people aren't doing what I'm doing, which is, shouting from the rooftops, it's time to get mind body into public education. It's all science. It's, alpha state brainwaves. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
But
agree.
when you're getting in there with Tai Chi or yoga, you're getting all the cardiovascular benefit. You're building muscle mass and bone tissue and all that stuff too. So it's kind of like a PE health science, mind body connection hybrid. It would be so far beyond anything that we've thought of like physical education in the past.
Can
It's
you
like high
imagine a
science.
gym class, that started with spiral actions and whole body movement and the opportunity to connect your hand to your eyes or massaging through the bottom of the feet, um,
Mm-hmm.
just to be able to coordinate things and then say, oh, now let's go do badminton or basketball.
Well, why even have all those things? Yeah, kids can learn how to do all that stuff on their own. Why not teach them some of the highest sciences in the history of humanity? Why not spend an hour teaching them some Tai Chi, some yoga, some mindfulness? And these things overlap too, because obviously when you do Tai Chi, when we're doing it at a high level, we're doing it extremely mindfully. We're just present. We're just feeling, feeling the letting go, feeling the flow, feeling that loosening and that opening. So all these things overlap. But why even bother with it? And unfortunately, a lot of schools don't even have PE classes these days, which is a whole other crime. But no, instead of trying to reinstate a regular PE class, why spend that time with them when we can be taking them to levels that will change the rest of their life in massively profound ways?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That'll head off disease and save trillions of dollars. So no, I'm talking about a whole new way of looking at education. with a 1 hour a day mind body class. And what we're advocating is that it include yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, and mindfulness, because those five, we call them the big five, they just have mountains of science behind them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There'll come a time, when everybody will go, oh, yeah, yeah, I always thought that. I always, it'll be everywhere in every school, and people go, yeah, yeah, everybody knew that.
Exactly. Exactly. When you think about you started the World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, and you got it started in the U.S., and then it started to branch out. What were some of the struggles that you came across as you were going through that process of trying to spread that word out?
Well, in the beginning, I mean, the biggest struggle was, when you would contact somebody by email or phone, because that's what we were doing. We were starting to reach out to everybody, uh, and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. And so the biggest struggle, in the beginning was, who are you? What are you talking about? And that was where I had to keep going back to alpha state, because that's where we get the validation. When we go into alpha state, that's where we get the clarity that shows us, okay, this is where our energy is going to be best spent. And then you feel that excitement, and that tells you, oh yeah, I'm on track for that. But you have to keep going back to that place, because you're not going to get the validation out there. You get the validation after it becomes what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't get the validation while you're trying to bring what manifest a vision of possibility into the hard earth of reality. That's all a lot of grunt work. But while you're doing the grunt work, it's like you start meeting visionaries around the planet, and then they inspire you. And I remember, we would get, every time there was a World Tai Chi Day, we'd have no idea if anybody was participating in it or not. We wouldn't really have much of a clue. I mean, we have a really big mailing list that goes out around the world, but you don't get a lot of feedback. You don't know whether people are reading them or whatever. And then after World Tai Chi Day was over, then we would start getting the photos and the videos from the different countries, and it was blowing our minds. Like Iran had a massive World Tai Chi Day event. It was really beautiful in a really beautiful park in Tehran, Iran. And then Israel had a really cool event. And then Malaysia had just a massive event, and Egypt, just thousands of people. And then they were getting, and then 25 U.S. governors ended up proclaiming the event. So there were, you would get these little affirmations, that you're on the right track from the external world. But it wasn't like that in the beginning. It was a lot of, I mean, I think a lot of people thought that we had an angle, that we were just kind of using this to sell something. And so that was good, because it made us make sure that we didn't do that. It made us really conscious of, not, letting it become, that, and keep, just supporting Tai Chi and Qigong, and then later mind body teachers all over the planet with the science. And so we were always feeding them the science, and then we were teaching them how to get government proclamations, and we were teaching them how to get local and national and international media coverage. And we did all the grunt work. We found the links, so that people could just go to a page and just follow it step by step, and it wouldn't be hard to do. And so really what we did was we taught Tai Chi and Qigong teachers how to be organizers, because I'd always been, since my youth, or young, as a young man, I worked in a Central American refugee camp in the 80s. And that really woke me up. It really woke me up that there's things in the world that we need to change. And then later on, it's like, social justice, environmental issues, things like that, I would get behind. And so I learned, and you never have a lot of money when you're organizing for those kind of causes. None of the causes I ever worked on had made a lot of money, or had a lot of money to spend. And so you learn how to do like guerrilla organizing. And so that's how we approached World Tai Chi and Qigong Day. And that's what we did. We taught Tai Chi and Qigong teachers all over the planet how to be organizers. And so that's what we want to do now with the global mind body community, including yoga, meditation, and mindfulness. Because if we can all pull together and spread the word on the Global Transformation Project, and just make it a habit to just get it out there in social media, and, just ask people, have you signed the petition? And because we want to have at least 100,000 signatures before we start going to the UN missions. Because me and Angela, what we're committing ourselves to is contacting individually every United Nations mission on the planet, and giving them the science, giving them the resolution, and getting the co-sponsors. And this is going to be a lot of work. And it's going to be kind of expensive for us because we're going to have to pay for postage and, all the things. We're donating all of our time to do it. But we want to have at least 100,000 signatures of people around the planet who say, yes, it's time to do this. Because then when we contact a UN mission, we can say there's 100,000 people, here they are, that signed this, that think that this is a great idea. And that'll get them to pay, it'll get them to take that few seconds extra to pay attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
And, but to be honest with you, I just can't, it's beyond me, I just can't believe that we can't get millions of signatures, because there are so many hundreds of millions of people around the planet whose lives have been changed by meditation or Tai Chi or Qigong or mindfulness or yoga. And, it's like it's time to pay it forward. The world needs us. It needs our testimony. It needs us to stand up and say, yeah, we should be teaching kids how to do this. There's no downside to it. It's all beautiful, natural, and it would just
Mm-hmm.
change everything. I mean, literally, with trillions of dollars saved year after year, you could literally end mass starvation around the planet. That would only take a little tiny sliver of that savings. And most deaths of children in the world are from dirty water, and it would take relatively little of that trillions of savings every year to clean up, have clean water all over the planet. So we're literally talking about the possibility of global transformation. We could all be a part of this healing wave, and it would change history, because in my new second edition of the Gospel of Science, I get into all this science, and I have the links. It's meticulously endnoted so that you can look at the science yourself. But what they're finding is that behaviors, when we change behaviors, fundamental behaviors, and how we respond to stress and things like that, they're starting to see that can actually be passed down through our genes, through our DNA. And so we're talking about changing the future of the history of humanity with people, a generation that has higher IQs, better reading skills, better math skills, better verbal fluency, and also increased gamma wave consciousness. Our normal brainwave states is beta. That's the busy brainwave state. And then when we go into a meditative state, when we get into the Tai Chi flow or the yoga, relaxation experience, we start to go into alpha state. And then when we go really deep in alpha state, we start to get close to theta. And then when you're in alpha theta, that's a real deep meditative state. And then delta, and then theta is the sleep state, and then delta is the really deep sleep state. But gamma is the highest. And what the research shows is that people that go into alpha state on a regular basis, they have more gamma wave consciousness. Gamma wave consciousness it's where we're looking at issues from multi dimensions, so from all different parts of our mind and consciousness and brain. And then what it does is it gives us those aha moments where we see these simple, elegant solutions to vastly complicated problems. And so Einstein, Tesla, Da Vinci, all the great thinkers, throughout human history, that's where they went to get their aha moments. And Einstein wrote about it pretty extensively. And so we could be teaching a whole generation how to go into that gamma wave consciousness. And God knows what kind of inventions or what kind of social ideas or whatever could come out of these kids. And so in Taoism, what we do is we try to relax out of the way of the more elegant order of the universe, the Tao. And so we're constantly trying to let go. And so what happens when we go into alpha state, the Taoist meditation or Tai Chi or Qigong or any of these things, when we go into that, we're going into that flow state, and then we can find the simple, elegant solutions to things. It's really complicated solutions, that just heal things in a myriad ways. But it doesn't seem like you're doing it. So in the Tao Te Ching, it says, "In doing nothing, all things are done." And that's what they were talking about. It's learning how to fix like everything without fixing anything. You know what I mean? You just go right to the core, and the core is consciousness. And it's not just me that knew that. It's like all the quantum physicists, the pioneers in quantum physics. They all knew consciousness is where everything happens from. It all ripples out from here.
And I think people lose track of the multidimensional piece of that, because we're so linear oriented to get the task done, and the decision making process is what's right in front of you. When you
Yeah.
have that opportunity for that whole multidimensional, you can sit in it.
Hmm.
Like you said, it's quick from one spot to the next spot of the solution, but you can't
Hmm.
see that when you're on that linear road, because you can only take the things that are right in front of you. You can't pick
Yeah.
anything else up.
Yeah,
Yes.
the way I describe it is the way the world works. It's in beta brainwave state or yang consciousness. And the Tao Te Ching, it said know the yang world. You know how the world works. Don't be an idiot, but keep to the yin. The yin is the receptive consciousness, the open consciousness. And the only way to do it is just to keep going back there. It's like I have to go back there constantly. It's like I forgot how hard it was to organize World Tai Chi Day. Because after 23 years, it got to the point where, kind of everybody who wanted to know knew what it was. They'd all heard of it. And, everybody knew that we'd organized it, and all this stuff. And so, so every year it just kept going on, but it wasn't a hard lift. It was really, you were kind of being lifted by it, really, more than
Mm-hmm.
anything. But then when we got the inspiration for the Global Transformation Project, because I'd collected all that science, and then when the book came out, I had to reread it over and over again. And yeah, and I had forgotten how hard it was to get people to see a vision. It's like you have to kind of grow it like a plant. It's like you have to water it and protect it and defend it, constantly. And but the only way that I've been able to endure that is to just keep going back to that off state, do the Qigong, do the Tai Chi, do the meditation. And I just have to go back there in alpha state over and over and over again, because when I go back there into that clarity of consciousness, then I'm in this space where I go, yeah, it's crazy. We're not teaching school kids all over the planet how to do this. Why not be saving trillions of dollars? Why not be lessening violence all over the planet? Which is another thing that mind body practices have been doing. The science on that is really incredible. And but then you go out and you get into the tangles of the world. And so the way I look at it is the world looks at it in the beta brainwaves like it's looking at a tree, say the tree of the world or society or whatever. And everybody's scampering around, and they all have their doctor glasses on, and they're looking at the sick leaves. And everybody's looking at all the different sick leaves, the social sick leaves, the health, physical sick leaves, the mental, emotional sick leaves, all the different sick leaves in society, and trying to figure out how to fix that leaf, right? But what mind body does is it goes right to the root. It goes right to the root, and it just pours water and nutrients right into the root. And it's not labor intensive, and it doesn't cost a huge amount of money to do it. It would be so cheap for schools around the planet to start interviewing the local mind body teachers, and they would find some great ones because I've met them all over the planet.
Mm-hmm.
They're right there in the community, and they could be in the schools sharing this wisdom that
Mm-hmm.
was evolved over thousands of years in India and China, and it further evolved through scientific measurement. It's like we can measure brainwaves now. We can know when people are going into alpha state. And so schools over the planet, they could, for like $200 or $300, they could get a brainwave sensor, and they could actually be teaching kids how to go into alpha state. It's
Mm-hmm.
just simple. It's just so simple. But you have to keep going back to that clarity space, because otherwise the tangles and the chaos that the world perceives all the time, a lot of it's not even real. Once we start going within on a regular basis, we start to see a lot of that stuff out there. It's just all, it's meant to sell magazines and newspapers and clickbait, stuff like that.
I was chatting with a colleague today, and we were talking about how when you're feeling that anxiety inside, or you're not quite sure what you want to do, no one on the outside knows.
Yeah.
It's only what you know on the inside. And so when you stop to realize that is only on the inside, what's on the
Yeah.
outside, then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's different, and you think, oh, do I really need to hold on to this, or can I actually let it go? And if I
Yeah.
let it go, how's everybody going to interact with me? The same way they would have before, except you were deciding you were going to come from a different place because it was that place of fear.
Yes. So it takes it all to a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I started shooting free throws. I got you know, I'm getting a little older, and I just got to a point where I decided I'm just going to start. You know, I mean, I teach all week long, but that's not the same as your own practice. And so I
Yes.
started, you know, really rededicating myself and really doing the meditation, really doing the Qigong, moving Qigong, really doing the Tai Chi. And then I decided I'd go down to the gym every day and do Qigong and Tai Chi. And then I decided I was going to start shooting free throws. And I've only shot free throws for about 5 months in the last 45 years. I was a lousy basketball player, but I just did it to kind of get away from the computer, you know? And, uh, and anyway, I was shooting baskets one day, and there was a kid in the gym, uh, about 11 years old. And and we were the only ones in the gym. And I kept noticing out of the corner of my eye that he never missed. I mean, he never missed. And that was so bizarre to me because when I was in school and I played basketball, if I threw the ball up and it actually hit some part of the backboard, I considered that a tremendous success. That's how bad I was. Uh, and, uh, and so I went over and talked to him, and I think that was a big deal. I think a lot of people wouldn't have, you know, kind of humbled themselves to an 11-year-old kid, but I did. And I went over and I said, I noticed when you're shooting, you never miss. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I'm a free throw shooting champion. And I said, yeah, but how do you do that? You know, how do you not miss? And he looked perplexed at first, like nobody had ever asked him to, you know, put it in that way. And then it's like I could see something, you know, dawning in his eyes. And he said, okay. He said, look, he said, this is what I do. He said, you know, when I'm dribbling the ball, I relax. And then what I do is I just stay, I continue to relax, and I let the shot come up through my body and out through my hand. And if I stay in that state of relaxation all the way through, I know I'm going to make it the instant that it leaves my fingertips. And conversely, I know I'm going to miss it if something, you know, hitched or tightened. And so once he told me that, I thought, wow, it's Tai Chi. That's what he's telling me. He's telling me to use my Tai Chi for shooting free throws. And so my free throw average went up like 30% in like a week. And then it's gone up since then. I'm 66 years old and I'm shooting free throws at a better, higher percent. Not every day, but there's a lot of days when I'll go in and I'll shoot a higher free throw percentage than the National Basketball Association averages at 66 years old, and a guy that sucked at basketball. And what it is it's just letting go, you know, going into that flow state. It's, you know, it's the pineal gland, it's the, you know, letting go, it's the alpha state, letting it flow through, or the flow of Tai Chi and Qigong or whatever, and just letting it flow through. And then as I practiced this, I started to realize that it was ego. It's ego, because if I'm when you're in the flow state, when you go into alpha state, you're connected to everything. You're just part of the field of everything. But then when we go into beta brain waves, then that's when we're thinking of me as an individual separate
Hmm.
from the universe. And one of my students got me a brainwave sensor. It's called Muse. If you Google Muse, you'll find it, and it has a phone app, and it syncs with that. Tells you what your brainwaves is while you go into these little 2-3 minute meditations. And I'd been meditating for, you know, Gong for decades before a student bought that for me. And man, I'll tell you what, that really helped a lot, because it was kind of hit or miss all those years. You know, it was like you know, you spend 30 minutes meditating, but you're not in alpha all that time. You know, you're in alpha sometimes. But when I got the brainwave sensor, it was great because it gave you instant feedback. And so, you know, when it would start, you'd be in beta brainwaves, you know, and then you'd start breathing, and it'd give you suggestions for relaxation and letting go. And then what would happen was, when you're in busy beta brainwaves, you would hear a sound from your phone app, and it sounded like you were in a tropical rainforest and the rain was falling. And so it wasn't jarring or anything, but you just knew you were in busy brainwaves, normal brainwaves. But then as you breathe and start to let go, let your mind just kind of let go and kind of go into that drift, then the rain would go away. And so then you'd know you were going into alpha state because the rain went away. But then if you started getting into an even deeper meditation, when you started getting to that, close to that, you know, alpha theta, then birds would start chirping in the background. And so then you'd know that you were in a deep meditative state. And then when you'd hear the birds chirping, you'd think, wow, I'm a really good meditator. And then the rain would start falling again, right? and because that was the ego, right? And
Yep.
it's not it's not the ego that we think about in the West, like, oh, he's an ego, he's all full of himself. I have no problem with that. If people are doing things for the right reasons, I love a huge ego. So it's not that; it's a different kind of ego. It's the ego where we realize that, or we think of ourselves as a separate entity where we're in word consciousness, where we're holding on to consciousness. But when we let that pineal gland let go and we go into that Tai Chi and Qigong flow state, or that meditative alpha state, then that's where we let go of being I and me. And then that's when we just become the flow of the universe, or the Tao, or whatever that's going through us. And when I do that, it's like I know that that shot is going to swish right through the net without touching the rim at all.
Hmm.
And it blows my mind how many times I can do that.
Hmm.
I just made 11 in a row yesterday when I went to the gym. To think that I could make 11 shots in a row. I mean, this is just so beyond me, because I'm not a basketball player. All I
Hmm.
do is Tai Chi and Qigong meditation, but just immersing myself in this stuff, it really opened up all these possibilities and these avenues. And we can be teaching kids how to go into this and creating space to do just wondrous things in their lives.
Hmm. Hmm. The other piece too that comes with that is if you're doing it in a group, particularly in a classroom, everybody ends up on the same wavelength, for lack of
Yeah.
a better term. And as they're going about working on a project or trying to collaborate with each other, it takes
Hmm.
away that conflicting piece, that ego piece, where you're trying to get your idea across to the other person because you're all in the same place
Hmm.
making the decisions for the same goal.
That's a
Um,
brilliant insight, and that would be such a huge thing, for a global transformation project resolution, to get it into public schools, just for that one reason, just to teach kids how to go into the mode of project solution, because that's what gamma wave consciousness is. It takes us into solution oriented consciousness. You know what I mean? But
mhm,
yeah, that what you're talking about, it's all validated with science. When we go into connective consciousness, as a group, it not only creates greater coherence in the group, but it ripples out through society. It actually, if they bring in 1% of high level meditators into a city, it lowers the violent crime rate for the whole city.
mhm,
And and talking about how minds come together as one. Uh, uh, if there's any basketball fans out there, like I said, I've never been a basketball fan, but I did start watching the Chicago Bulls because it was just such an incredible dynasty. I mean, and it was just so entertaining. You had Dennis Rodman. You didn't know what color his hair was going to be that day, or whether he was going to wear a dress to practice or whatever. And then you had Michael Jordan, the real, superstar. But then Pippen. You had this, these five guys that could just do magic on a basketball court like nobody had ever done in the history of basketball, and nobody's ever done it since. And anyway, Phil Jackson, their coach, they called him the Zen master, and he taught them all how to meditate. Even Dennis Rodman, yeah, and they all talked about it, and they all said, yeah, it did something. It made us all one group, kind of quantum mind is what
mhm,
it did. And
mhm,
that's what this offers the whole planet, because, like I said, they did a study in 48 cities, and they found that in all 48 cities, where they were bringing in 1%, at least 1% of high level meditators, it lowered the crime rates the next year for that city, as opposed to the control cities that didn't do that. And that effect lasted for 5 years. So imagine what introducing hundreds of millions of new meditators around the planet into the noosphere, Teilhard de Chardin, the noosphere, the global consciousness, because we can see from the science. We just had Dr. Nelson on a program a couple of months ago. We do a monthly program with these scientists that are doing consciousness research. And
mhm,
he showed the data chart that showed how World Tai Chi and Qigong Day. And at that time, there were probably only, I would say at the most, maybe 50,000 people around the world that were doing it on the same day. But we changed the consciousness. We created greater coherence in the consciousness of the whole planet. And so did World Yoga Day, and so did the International Peace Meditation Day. And they studied hundreds of these events. And they all had a really, when we go into that connection state, it has a much more powerful, because a lot of times in my class, when I tell people that their brain waves don't stop at their skulls, it makes them a little nervous because they think, wow, I don't always have really good thoughts. I don't want that going out. And I tell them, don't
That's
worry
right.
about it. Yeah, don't worry about that because those thoughts aren't powerful. What the science shows is the powerful thoughts are the connective thoughts, the healing
Mhm.
thoughts, because that's what connects people. That's when the quantum consciousness resonates. And yeah, it's just a really extraordinary time to be alive because we're talking science here, but really, I mean, it almost sounds like we're talking about like any number of the prophets from 2,000 years ago. This is the same thing they were saying. Be nice to each other. We're all connected.
Mhm.
Love is the answer to everything.
Yep, exactly, exactly. My favorite research when I was working on my master's thesis was around the idea of when you come together, that the chemistry immediately shifts if you
Hmm.
have a healing intention.
Hmm.
And so I've always tried to hold on to that with
Hmm.
any activity that I've done. So even as the way we started the podcast is that bring that piece in, because just by coming and connecting, you've already started the healing process within the body. And it's
Yeah.
such a beautiful way to engage with people. And you think about in a classroom, in a school, and the teachers all talking to each other, and the support staff, everybody on that same piece. Every time you run into someone, it's on a healing potential. It's not on a, what are we learning today kind of
Yeah.
idea, or what tasks do we have to accomplish because that's the mandate for this week.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's such a different approach, and then how everybody can feel out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. My teacher, she taught me when I started teaching. That's one of the things that she taught me is she said, Bill, before you go into a class, you want to go into that alpha state. You want to go into that state where you just let go, and you want to let go of any lesson plans or any idea of what you think that class is going to be, and just touch into that connection of everybody, not the individual people, personalities, but just that higher consciousness of everybody. Tap into that place. And then when you've let go of everything that you think that this class is supposed to be, and you just feel that drift, then that's when you want to go in and teach the class. And that changed everything. It changed everything because, like you say, you're just, it's like the only intent is for the best possible outcome of this connection of all of us coming together. And, and if we were teaching kids how to do this, imagine how that would liberate the teachers. They
Mhm.
wouldn't have to be dealing with all these little squabbles and errant, minds dance, going all over the place. The kids
Mhm.
would have a much greater ability to focus and consider things, and then that would allow teachers, to lift to their higher potential as well. And we recommend that teachers be a part of the program. It's like prisons that have adopted, mind, body, or meditation programs. Apodaca prison in Mexico, they had one of the worst, most violent prison incidents in Mexican prison history. And the response that they had for it wasn't to bring in more guards and punish prisoners more. What their solution to that was to teach everybody in the prison how to meditate. And so they taught all the inmates, all the prison guards, all the administrators, the warden, everybody how to meditate. They haven't had a major violent incident since that happened, just from teaching people how to meditate.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's like the potential of this is world altering, world
Mhm.
altering.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and to
Yeah.
know that, it only takes it doesn't take very many of us going in. Well, see, one of the things that I found through the research that I did was that, and I always bring this up. I do a lot of stress management presentations, corporations, and different places. And one of the things that I generally always mention to them is I say, who in this room thinks that violent crime's out of control? And the majority always thinks so. And I say, well, I got some news for you. The FBI's data and the United Nations data shows that the violent crime rates in the United States are at 40-year lows, and not just in the United States, but in many countries around the world. Now, what has happened in the last 40 years? Mind body practices have spread around the planet like a wildfire.
Mhm.
And it was the Beatles really that got that going. Because I grew up in Western Kansas. I'd never heard of meditation. I never heard any of that stuff. But we all listened to the Beatles. We all had all the Beatles records. And so when we heard that the Beatles went to India to study meditation, there were little kids like me all over the world that were going, "Wow, what's meditation?" And so that really, and then the Maharishi, he took that fame and he created the TM Foundation. And when I first found out about the TM Foundation, I was really kind of upset because they charged, I think, a couple $1,000s for you to learn the TM technique. But I'm not anymore because they use that money incredibly well, and they invested in research. And what I realize now from being in healthcare, around healthcare for 30 years, less than 0.5% of the NIH budget, that's where everybody gets their scientific, medical research money in the US. Only less than 0.5% of that goes to mind, body, and alternative and complementary medicine. And that makes no sense at all. Because we know that mind body dramatically boosts the T cell count, and we know that that caused people not to catch, largely not to catch COVID if they had high T cell counts. So it's insane that there's not a lot of money flowing into it, but it doesn't make people billions of dollars. So that, money runs things. And, we just have to come to terms with that. But now we know, and I kind of lost track of how I got onto that, but it was tied into what you were talking about.
All of it being, how are we going to connect? And when we connect, we have that opportunity to be in flow, and just be in flow, and not be trying to be more than we need to be, which I think people spend so much time trying to be that.
Yeah. Well, I kind of, yeah, okay. On the one hand, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like we have all these false expectations and false responsibilities that are piled on us that we think that we're expected to live up to. And it's just a huge, big stress ball, and it's not real. A lot of it's stuff that we imagine that we think people demand of us, and it's not real. If we just, found our esteem and our center, we could let a lot of that go and not necessarily live that way. But with the mind body community, there's kind of another thing with that. And I think that it's really important that we not think that we're less than we are. Because when you look at the science, man, I mean, we could change the planet. If we were teaching this stuff to our local kids in our local public schools, we could be changing the planet. And I think it's really important for us to go, yeah, this is a precious thing that I've spent years cultivating in my life, to make my life better. And here I'm poised here, to be offering it to kids, who are lost. They're lost in a technological world that's not healthy. And I'm not against technology. I have 3 websites. I have 5,000 Facebook followers, and all that stuff. But I use it as an organizing tool. I don't sit there and stew in it. I don't have political arguments on it. That's all a waste of time. A lot of times you're talking to robots. And you're arguing with robots, but just to keep all the numbers up, it's
Exactly.
it's a whole issue. But yeah.
So how can people sign that petition? Where do they need to
Okay.
go to do that?
Yeah, you simply go to globaltransformationproject.org, and then you'll see all over it. It'll have links to sign the petition. And then what I hope everybody will do is to look through some of the videos. We have all the interviews that we did with these major scientists, from Princeton, Heart Math Institute, Harvard, top leading thinkers on the planet that will really change the way that you see things. And we have those videos. It's all a free public service. We do all this for free. We want to get this information out there. So when you go to globaltransformationproject.org, you can click on the tab and you can look at the past interviews that we did and discussions that we had. And then also look at the science, look at this science on how mind body raises IQs and, test scores and math proficiency, all this stuff. Familiarize yourself with this. We should all be preaching this. Making sure educators and education institutions know about this, and then also look at the supporters that we have from major universities all over the planet. Leading thinkers who are officially supporting this, and then just look at this like not like a burden, but that you can be a part of a global movement that will change the planet, not just for us, but for future generations until the end of time. But it'll definitely make a better world for us if we get this to go through. And so just starts mentioning it. What I always do is if I do a social media post or anything on any kind of mind body science or any discussion or anything, I'll just put at the end of it, no matter what it is I'm talking about, I'll put the end of it, have you signed the petition, ? www.globaltransformationproject.org. And then let them go there and discover that. But we should be able to get millions of signatures. We should be able to build an unprecedented mind-body coalition. John Kabat-Zinn, Russell Brand, Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, all these people, they should all get behind this. This is just such a simple, elegant, common sense way for global transformation, economic transformation, healthcare transformation, social, political transformation. Because if we have more people with larger empathy and compassion parts of their brain all over the planet, and also those people are also more creative. And the research shows that regular mind-body practitioners are much more likely to actualize the lives that they envision. And so if all of us mind-body practitioners, whether it's yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong, or mindfulness around the planet, and there's endless numbers of us, hundreds of millions of us all around the planet, if we know that it can do that, bring that about, we should be the ones that should be telling everybody about this, because we're the ones that are more likely to actualize the lives that we want. So we're the ones that are more likely to actualize the planet that we want. And if we don't do that, if we don't accept our esteem and our value as mind-body teachers and mind-body supporters around the planet, it'll just be a sad thing, that we didn't do it.
It's interesting. You've said lots of interesting things where I'll look forward to going back and just be able to pull little quote snippets of the way that you put words together. And this last little bit, now that I said that, I've lost the train of that little piece. Can you repeat what you just said in that last bit?
Boy, let me see if I can remember it. It was about us finding our esteem, the mind-body community, and that we're more, the research shows that we're more likely to be able to actualize the lives that we want to live than people that don't practice mind-body practices on a regular basis. And so if we can do that for ourselves in our personal lives, we should be the ones that should be able to help foster this for the whole planet. And I think the reason that we're more capable of doing that is because when we go into alpha state, we have to let go. We have to let go of everything that we are, everything that we think we are, everything that we believe. You can't bring any of that stuff with you. I actually had like kind of a cosmic, extraordinary consciousness experience one time, and I was trying to kind of halfway do it. And, whatever was giving me this experience, it said, no, can't do it that way, Bill. It's all or nothing. It's all or nothing. You have to let go completely in order to have, a larger consciousness. And so mind-body people all over the planet, we're constantly letting go of what we are so that we can become what we might be. And so we, out of all the people on the planet, because as I get older and as I watch everything, I realize that, man, so much of the planet is just lost. It's lost. It's lost in confusion. It's lost in division. The media teaches us to, one channel teaches us to hate these people. The other channel teaches us to hate these people, and division and chaos. And I just look at the world, and I'm just kind of like a playground school of children, and they're all, confused and chaotic, and it's like they need some kind of, calm, rational solution to things. And that's what we offer with the Global Transformation Project. And so we've just got to find our esteem and not let ourselves be treated like the card table down the hall at the medical conference, like we've all been treated for 30 years. It's like this is our time in history. Well, it's the Aquarian age is what it is, and I'm an Aquarian.
And then that brought out the idea of the piece that you said, which was actualizing the planet. And I think what happens is we actualize a lot of things, but we're not actualizing the planet, because what gets stuck in the way is, but I want to be able to do this, but I would like, and that ego brings it back, that pulls you away from that whole global piece. And so that time spent cultivating allows you that opportunity to find that space and that flow to be there, so that actualization can start to become the actual vision rather than kind of where we're kind of float in and out, but we're not really committed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a general perception, especially since the pandemic and the lockdowns and everything, but there's a general, see, I teach hospital classes, Zoom classes. So I'm dealing, it's like I kind of have my finger on the pulse of society as far as kind of seeing where people are. And most people coming out of that, they have kind of a dismal, constricted view of possibility for the future. And that's kind of what the popular culture, it really doesn't paint a very rosy picture. But when you look at the science, you realize none of that is real. Violent crime rates are at a 40-year low, a 40-year low. Uh, and as mind body spread around the planet, and the planet Earth is actually vastly less violent than it's ever been before in human history. But most people don't know that. They just think the world is going to hell in a handbasket. And so it's what the mind body community has the potential of doing if we keep bringing ourselves back to this alpha state, because we're all challenged by that. We're all challenged with being pulled and distracted. So it's like organizing something like World Tai Chi Day or a Global Transformation Project. It's like you'll get a great idea and it'll be all inspiration. And then what'll happen is you'll start getting pulled into some direction and approaching it from some way. But if you keep coming back to alpha state, you're in a place of consciousness where you can realize, oh, wait a minute, no, that's not really going to where it's going to help this thing grow. Even though that may be feeding like an ego thing that I have or whatever, you know what I mean? But it's not
Hmm.
really leading to where it wants to go. And then once you get on back on track, like you say, you feel the flow.
Hmm.
You feel that effervescence and that excitement when you get on track. And so we're learning how to kind of navigate the waters and feel that flow. And my God, we could be sharing this with kids all over the planet.
Hmm. Hmm. All right. Can you say the website again? And I know it'll be in the
Yeah,
description notes, but I just want everybody to have it so
yeah,
that as they're thinking now, they're going to click on it and go and look up all this
yeah, yeah.
lovely
Thanks,
information.
Michelle. Yeah, I can never say it enough. It's www.globaltransformationproject.org. And you can always just Google Global Transformation Project and it'll come right up to the top. And then, yeah, please, once you look at it, sign the petition and just start sharing it with every mind body social media group or, just anywhere where you think educators, put it on educators' social media, anywhere where, somebody would resonate with this. And really the whole planet should, but educators definitely, and any mind body, any yoga group or meditation group or Tai Chi group. If you have, you could post it, send it to John Kabat-Zinn, send it to Russell Brand, send it to David Lynch with the TM Foundation. These people, all these groups should be involved in this because we're not asking anybody for anything. All
Mm,
we're doing is offering our services to deliver this resolution draft to all the United Nations missions and to lobby them and interact with them. And it's going to be a lot of work. I mean, we're going to be approaching 177 nations right off the bat who co-sponsored the International Day of Yoga. So we're going to go to those 177 nations first. So we're looking at a lot of work. And me and Angie, we're not spring chickens. We're kind of in semi-retirement, and so we're committing ourselves to a massive task here. So everybody out there, get it out of your head that we're asking you for something. We're offering you something.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, that's what we're
mm-hmm,
doing.
mm-hmm. Beautiful. I always like to finish with some kind of a movement recommendation. So you've talked a lot about meditating. What's a
Mhm.
movement thing that you would typically put into your day?
Well, okay. Well, when we go through our moving qigong, what we close with is jiggling. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a jiggling thing, and I find that it's really powerful. There was a doctor that was actually traveling all over the United States, working with combat veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq who were suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And all he did was he would just go to different cities and he would teach them how to do qigong, breathing and jiggling. And I don't think he called it qigong, but that's what it is. That's where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
And those people, those guys were, guys and women, they were having really amazing benefits from shaking stuff out. And so I thought maybe we could just shake some stuff out. So you can do it
Sure.
sitting or standing,
Mm-hmm.
but I like to do it standing. And so just letting the knees bend a little bit and then letting the eyes close and just feeling the tip of the tongue lightly touch the gum line behind the top two front teeth. And again, just feeling that sensation because that brings us more into heart centered consciousness where we're not thinking, we're feeling. and feeling the cool waves of breath filling us from the abdomen all the way up through the airy fibers of the lungs. And on the sighing exhale, that wave of exhalation just comes down through our relaxing, melting body as we just melt onto the bones and sink onto the vertical axis, rooting into the earth. And now with the eyes still closed, just let the dantian bounce. So the knees give and the dantian's bouncing and everything's jiggling. And all of those deep skeletal muscles can just sigh and just go liquid on the bones, massaging them from underneath. And even the bones and the bone marrow are being shaken out on that subatomic energy level as we just sigh and let go. So once the dantian starts bouncing, it's like the paint can shaker down at Home Depot. It just takes off and we just let go around it. And all those deep skeletal muscles sighing, going liquid on the bones. And all the muscles around the rib cage and through the breadth of the back as they sigh, those ribs just get looser and more open. Even the muscles inside the rib cage can sigh. So we just feel it happening. We don't make it happen. We surrender. And now the cranium and the cranial muscles, as they sigh, they jiggle a bit easier on the skull as they do. There's more space for that lightness. And the facial muscles and facial bones and the sinuses beneath and behind them, sighing and sloshing. A bit easier back there as they do. And the ears and inner ears, those tiny bones and muscles deep in the sides of the head, sighing and sloshing. And the hinges of the jaws slackening ever more as they sigh. So everything's just an energy field. That's all we are. And so the energy of the jaws can sigh and open and slacken, liquefy. And now the brain getting a nice jiggle up there, just enjoying how that feels to feel the brain jiggling. And then on that next sighing exhale, as we let that energy field of the brain sigh, enjoy the give as it just begins to go more and more liquid, just sloshing around up there. And the pineal gland right in the center of the brain, that transcendent point of consciousness. The pineal gland in the center of the brain, that's where we hold consciousness. That's where we control. And so when we're thinking in words and beta brainwaves, yang consciousness, there's a little bit of tension in the center of the brain, the pineal gland area. And so we just let that area just sigh and just go liquid. And when the pineal gland lets go in the center of the brain, everything lets go. We're no longer thinking about what we're doing. We just become the experience. Just the sloshing sensations and loosening and opening. Nice full breaths. Really letting everything just sigh and sag. In the old brain, the brainstem in the back, sighing and sloshing, breaking up all that old panic and fear stuff back there so they can just surrender into the safety of that opening lightness. In the spine and the spinal fluid, and the whole back and all the miles of nerves just being shaken out and dusted off as they breathe and discharge the static that they've held onto. And the solar plexus in the upper abdomen, as we let that area sigh and slosh, we let go of all that panic and fear stress that we squeeze up there. And we become more open and more vulnerable. And so as that continues to sigh and liquefy, it allows space for that lightness to vibrate and echo and slosh through the abdomen and the pelvic bowl and all the organs sighing and sloshing in the kidneys and adrenal glands and the lower back. Just getting a nice massage as they let go. And the heart and the lungs, as they sigh and let go of themselves, we can feel them being gently pummeled and they're getting a nice massage. And noticing how they can sigh and let go ever deeper. Let that massage in ever more deeply. It's surrender, it's not effort. And the aorta, the heart, it's getting a nice massage. And the arteries and the capillaries and the veins, and even the blood is being shaken out as it too can breathe and discharges the static that it's held onto. So one last series of shakes here, seeing just how absolutely liquid we can become. And letting that pineal gland let go in the center of the brain. So we just become these waves of pleasure. There is nothing else. Just getting lost in it. And it just feels so good to just be out of control. Just let it take us. So we don't even know how we're going to get wiggled. It just happens to us. Just a bunch of wild, out of control jigglers. mentally, emotionally, physically, letting it all shatter, liquefy, and open and light. And another full breath in. On that sighing exhale, eyes closed but not moving, just feeling that awakening, that tingly radiance bubbling through everything that we are. We remember what we are, which is beings of light, limitless and unfolding radiance. Let the head and the heart let go of their control, their analysis, so they can just marinate in that expansive lightness that they are. Good. All right.
Lovely, lovely. Feels alive.
Yeah. Yeah, really. We just shake off all the crap and then all there is life.
Yeah. It was interesting. The body was kind of up, down, but then it went sideways at one point, and then it was like, oh, sideways feels so much better than up and down. And then, just again, that direction thing where you try to go one way and then multidimensionally being able to open up and let all of those pieces come in.
Yeah. And always letting go of patterns.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a metaphor
Mm-hmm.
for what we're talking about on a global scale.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we're talking about is letting go of old dysfunctional patterns that make no sense whatsoever. Because there was a school in Baltimore, and they had a detention room where they sent kids that got in trouble. And anyway, they got rid of their detention room. What they did was they replaced it with a meditation room, and their bullying rates went down, their test scores went up. And so that's all we're doing here. We're just as we shake off the dust, it's like we see that there's just these larger, more elegant ways to solve virtually everything. All these huge, horrific problems that they, get on the news and they just, icky, it's just nauseating. But the solutions are just hanging like ripe fruit. It's just, and they're just so simple. And the gamma wave consciousness is what takes us to see that. And so, mind body practitioners around the world, it's time to find your place in human history.
That's a beautiful, beautiful way to leave a note and get people to say, I want to be a part of this and I want to be involved. And if you haven't done World Tai Chi and Qigong Day and found an event near you, that's the last Saturday in April every year. And how many countries are involved in that now?
Over 85. We don't have an exact number because we're always surprised to find countries doing it that we didn't even know. I think most of the events we never know about, but it's shocking knowing how many we do know about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
hundreds of cities, 85 countries. That's
phenomenal,
yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah.
Well, Bill, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing the time and the wisdom that you have. And I hope people will also check out your book and go and see the
It'll
pieces.
change the way you see everything.
Yeah.
Seriously, I'm not even trying to sell the book. Check it out from your local library, or if you sign up at worldtaichiday.org for our free weekly newsletter, several times a year I give that book away for free. That's a painful thing to do when you've spent years writing a 700-page meticulously end-noted book, like a textbook. It's hard to click that button and say it's going to be free on this day, but I do that several times a year because it'll change the way that you see everything about everything, and it'll give you an incredibly hopeful and positive vision of the future. And what the science shows, there was a 20-year study, it showed that our vision of the future is the largest determinant of what our future is going to be. So having this fearful, divisive, kind of mainstream popular culture way of looking at the world, and it permeates this. I know I talk to people about this and they go, well, that doesn't affect me. Well, it affects me. It affects everybody. We're in denial if we don't think it does. And so to have a science-based vision, a reality-based vision that shows you just the opposite. We're at a precipice where this can become just an extraordinary adventure in the coming years. But it only happens if we open it up right here. That's where it all starts.
Exactly. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Season 3, we're devoted to the transformational process that happens when people reach into their authentic selves and create magic. Our season has several publications, and we hope they inspire and empower you to consider living your true heart's desire with love and compassion for others at the forefront. Thank you for joining us. This is Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, wishing you the courage to face your own transformation towards well-being and for the well-being of those around you. Have a great day.